Take away the business suits, the shallow cocktail party laughter. Take away the $1 million deal. Underneath the thin disguise, there's something everybody's after. A hunger in the heart for what is real. But we play charades in a carnival of counterfeits. No one's really what they seem to be. We're a long parade of big pretenders and politics, wishing we could somehow just be free. Coming soon to your neighborhood, the shiny entourage, selling smoke and mirrors, door to door, door to door. The technicolor promise might just be a big mirage. And don't we somehow know there's so much more? But we play charades in a carnival of counterfeits. No one's really what they seem to be. No, no, oh, we're a long parade of charlatans and hypocrites, wishing we could somehow just be free. Be free, just to be free, just to be free.
If I were him, I'd bundle my home in all.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for coming. We are so excited for you to be here. So excited. For those of you who have been with the Engage conference and those of you from the public that have come in, welcome. We are so excited that you are here. I am Missy Brooks, Director of Teaching and Learning for Mountain Brook Schools, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our fearless leader and his friend, Dr. Dicky Barlow and Alan Levi. Please put your hands together and welcome them.
Wow. Hey, everybody. Hey, can we turn those lights, make them a little dimmer? There, that's a lot better. I didn't say off, but off's great with me. How about you, Alan? So hello, my name's Dicky Barlow, and I know you're not here to listen to me, so I'm going to ask as few questions as I can and let Alan talk. But let me just tell you a few things that I think that you need to know about Alan that will set the stage for today. So I believe it was in 1999, Alan and I had been friends for about 18 years at that point, and I found out my 5-year-old nephew had a brainstem glioma and was only going to live 9 months. Didn't know what to do. They needed special attention. He needed special attention. And I didn't know how to help my sister. So I called two people. I called a guy named Bebo Norman, and I called Alan Levi. And they were both musicians. And they were both on the road at the time. And I said, my sister needs help. Would you play a concert for her son Levi? And would you give all the money to their treatment? And without hesitation, they said, just name the time and we'll do it. And 3 to 4 months later, they raised over $50,000 for my nephew. So I tell you that because that sets the stage when you read the book Theo of Golden and you think, oh my gosh, who could write a book like that? Alan Levi could write a book like that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Alan Levi.
Thank you. So Dickie knows that most of my vocational life has been spent in front of people doing various things, lawyer, judge, musician, and maybe not so well known outside an intimate circle of my friends is that I suffer mightily from stage fright. And so I thought, when I become an author, I will never have to get in front of a group of people again. So this is a continuation of a joke that God has played on me all of my life, but I am so honored to be here with you, and especially to be in a room full of educators and people who work with our young students, young people. I think if I could go back and rechart my life, which I'm glad I can't, I would choose to be an educator. I think of Mrs. Freeman, who taught me how to read. See, spot. See, spot, run, right? Yeah. And just the incredible impact that it is to be able to look at words on a page and make sense of them, and maybe later in life to use them to write stories of your own. I go back to first grade for that. But Mrs. Tanquery, my 6th grade teacher, who taught me how to diagram sentences, which is still one of the most useful things I've ever learned in life. And then just all of the teachers all the way up through graduation from law school, and then in my mid-30s when I was a student at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. I have a great affection and a profound sense of gratitude to educators. And my guess is that my view of it from the outside looking in is somewhat romanticized because I only see the good parts of it. But I am sure that it is very demanding and at times deflating work that you do. But can I just say, in behalf of your kids, the ones that you touch day to day, thank you for what you do. And I pray that your time here together has been an encouragement for you as you take a little break for summertime and get ready for next school year. But thank you, and press on in the good work that you're doing. I'm so honored to be here as a student myself, and now someone who is in maybe at least mildly a pedagogical role in some of the things that I get to do. Book writing, after all, if you have some sense that you're writing with a purpose, is a teaching opportunity. And I've been very gratified that Theo of Golden, which is the first novel that I've written, has found at least a few readers who seem to enjoy it and connect with it. And so if you are one of those, thank you so much. Dickie asked me a question.
Why? You're doing great. So, Alan, so go back, and you just said a couple things that you've done, but just take us through your brief history. You went to the University of Georgia. You were in law school. Go.
Yeah, so I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, one of 5 kids to a very normal, you know, as much as a family anywhere can be normal, in Columbus, Georgia. I was a pretty good student as a kid. I don't remember an awful lot about my childhood, not because it was bad, but because I was so immersed in the gladness of it that I didn't ever stop to, I guess, tuck it away in my memory. But I graduated high school, started at Mercer University, left there after my freshman year, went to the University of Georgia, got a degree in English because I had heard that would be helpful if I pursued a career in law. Went to law school at Georgia, graduated in 1980. At the end of the year, I went 9 straight quarters. After that, I moved to Columbus and worked as a lawyer for 10 years as a litigator. I also did lots and lots of adoption work. But in 1990, I left law practice and went to Edinburgh, Scotland to get a master's degree in Scottish fiction. I did not go there for that purpose, but I needed a reason to put on my application to stay there for 2 years, which I did very happily. I got my master's. I just discovered again, maybe for the first time, but I like to think again, the beauty of reading good books. And the difference between being in Edinburgh or even in Athens is that I was there purely because I wanted to be there. I told my professor, Ian Campbell, when I first arrived in Edinburgh, I don't care if I get a degree. I don't care if I pass your course. I've got a job if I want to go back home and work as a lawyer. But would you help me to read books that every literate Westerner ought to read? And he was over the moon, I think, to have a student who really wanted to learn, and I did. And so I read voraciously when I was in Edinburgh. And when I came home after 2 years there, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I decided I'll do law practice part-time, so 4 or 5 hours a day maybe. And then with the rest of my time, I was developing songwriting a bit, something that I had previously done for pleasure. And after 3 years of part-time law practice, then I ventured into music full-time. And my career plan was very simple. I was going to do music for approximately 2 years. I was going to go broke. That was very fundamental to my plan. I was going to go broke. And I was reasonably confident that I could accomplish that goal. But I did it for a couple of years, and I was making a good living at it. So I stayed in music for roughly 15, 18 years. Until 2011 when my brother Gary got sick. And I stayed home for exactly a year with him while he slowly dwindled away and eventually died. He was my best friend. He was my Theo in life, my mentor. He was a never married guy. I'm a never married guy. We were going to grow old together like a couple of secondhand lions and just make a mess of life. But when he died, I did not want to go back on the road and travel as much as I had done previously, so I ran for a judgeship in the county where I live, and I was elected to be a probate judge, which was a wonderful experience, but it required me, at least the way I practiced it, to wear a watch, to put on a necktie, and to sit at a desk, and those were 3 things that I did not take great pleasure in, so I quit that after just a little while. And then I was at a crossroads. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was old enough to be retired. And in the back of my mind, there has always been this story that I want to write. And I didn't know when I might write it, but somewhere about 2019, 2020, I honestly don't recall, but I was in a coffee shop one day, and I had the idea for a story.
This coffee shop right here?
That's it. That's it. I have sat many hours in that coffee shop, not so much for the coffee, though the coffee is good, but for the portraits. And as I was waiting for my coffee order to be prepared, I was looking around the room. They're all for sale. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to buy these portraits and give them to the people that are in the frames? And so I bought 5 of them. I think 4 or 5, and took them home with me. And the seed corn for this story began to germinate. And I started writing scenes of what it would be like to give this portrait to that person. And that's where Theo of Golden got started. And I kind of settled on this old man from Portugal as my protagonist. But my idea was simply to write the story and then be ready to write the one I really want to write someday. But Theo got out into the public. He escaped his cage, and now here I am, a public speaker.
But you didn't plan on, tell the story about how it actually got published.
Yeah. So Yeah, I was never writing to publish a story. It really was just a personal challenge. There were times that, as I was writing, I was thinking, God, this is really a sweet scene. This is a very credible encounter between this old man and this person. But I never had in mind to publish, and I didn't even know how one would begin doing such a thing. I read the book out loud a couple of times to a friend just to see what it would sound like, and it helped me to improve, I think, the writing of the story. But once I finished it, I patted myself on the back. I've accomplished my goal, and I'm done, and retired the book. But as Providence would have it, for the last, is it 20 years, Ben?
25.
Bart, 20 years or so. There are 6 fellows, myself being one of them, Dicky being one, Bart Scarborough being one, Ben May being one, Bebo Norman, and Benson Bottoms. We get together for an annual long weekend where we just share notes about life and where we are and where we're struggling, where we're doing well. And they knew that I had been working on this experiment as a novelist. And they said, what's up with your manuscript? And I said, well, I'm done. I'm finished. Hoorah, I did it. And they requested permission to read it, which I was reluctant to let them do because I knew it was still a very woefully imperfect piece of writing. But I sent it to them, and much to my surprise, they were encouraging, you should do something with this, which I will have to be honest with you, I took with a grain of salt because I know they love me. And I thought, they're just being nice to me. But I kind of leaned into them to make sure that they really meant it, because I said, if I do this, I'm going to probably lose a lot of money. And I will probably come to y'all to reimburse it. And they were all very affirming in their insistence that we release the book. So I didn't know what in the world to do. I didn't have an agent, a publisher, and I knew I was not going to go look for either of those. But in the world that we now live in, if you're a writer, for all the ugly things that can be said about self-publishing or Amazon in particular, the playing field has been largely democratized. And you can write a book and you can figure out a way to get it out into the world. So my niece, who lives in Auburn, I hired her to work for me, and I said, I'm going to write and you're going to do everything else. I'm telling you this long story because I'll bet there are some writers in the room, and I would like to encourage you. But I hired my niece. I said, look, we can afford to lose some money, so no big deal. We're not going to sell any of these books, but let's have fun. And if we can sell 100, that would just be wonderful. If we could sell 1,000, I would be over the moon. And so she started doing her due diligence, and we ended up self-publishing the book, and it did really well. But the book is only out in the world because of these dear friends of mine, and maybe I would add as a footnote to that, I hope all of you have a little circle of people who you love and trust with your PIN number and your Social Security number, which is to say a lot these days. But these guys are that to me. And when they said, do something with it, I could not believe in myself. I still cannot tell anyone that I am an author. That feels like such an insult to the word author. But these guys can say it proudly because they love me and they believe in what I do. And again, going back to you teachers, you might not think you're a very good teacher, and you probably have your weak spots as a teacher, an educator. But I hope you've got people in your life, and it may just be the little kids that you teach, who from time to time look up at you and say thanks for all you do. Because they believe in you more than you believe in yourself, which is what these guys have done for me and continue to do for me. But they are now joined by a mighty throng that say we are glad that this book got out in the world, due to no credit on my part. But I'm so indebted to these fellows here. And I'm glad that half of the gang, more than half of the gang, is here today. So incidentally, that applause was for me. It was not for y'all. I don't want y'all.
I don't know about that. I felt pretty good about it. So if we can switch the picture, can we do that, Jay? So why don't you tell us about this moment right here,
Yeah.
and if you'll tell that story. So because really the reason I'm asking this, because it makes me and Ben and Bart look really good. So.
Yeah. Next question. No, this is one of the most precious moments in my life. So we used to meet at my home for our annual weekend together, but because we've sold some of the property and I've got a small house, we kind of have come up with alternate plans. But this was back in the day when we were still meeting, I think, right? All at the farm. And every Saturday night, we would go to a place called Luke's Pub in Harris County where I live. And it's just a steakhouse, beer joint kind of thing.
Dive.
A what? A dive.
A dive.
Yeah, a dive.
Yeah.
And so Saturday evening rolls around, and we're getting ready to load up to drive over to Luke's, and I'm standing out where we park cars. And I live back in the woods. There's no way that somebody accidentally drives up my driveway. But all of a sudden, this van comes kind of tearing by my house. It misses my driveway, keeps going, and I tell the guys, hey, I'm going to go find out who that is. They don't belong here. And about the time I was getting in my truck, it swung around and started heading back in our direction, and then pulled right where all the cars were. And a woman got out, and she had on a chef outfit. And then another woman got out, and she had on a chef outfit. And my buddies were totally calm and at ease about what was going on. I was totally discombobulated by it. And then I realized this is a conspiracy. And while I don't know who was standing with me in the driveway, but the other guys had gone inside the house, I realized we're not going to Luke's tonight. We're going to have supper here tonight. And so we went inside, and they had set the table, and they had put little name cards, and everybody had a character name from the book. And we sat outside and had a drink while the chef was fixing the meal. But we finally went back in. We took our places. I will not tell you the name tag that they gave me, but maybe you can guess. But we sat and we ate the meal, and then afterwards, they went around the table to tell me that they think I'm a writer. And they affirmed me in the most wonderful, beautiful ways. And then I think it was Bart went to the back of the house and brought out this large object. And it was wrapped in brown paper. And I opened the gift, and it was a portrait that the artist had done of me. And at that moment...
Can you flip to that picture now?
Yeah.
You were a lot younger in that picture, bro.
I was a lot younger in that picture. But again, it was an expression of their affirmation and their love for me. But I dare say Theo of Golden would never have seen the light of day but for these guys really getting behind me and pushing me. And I pray for all of you that you've got people like that in your life who would have your portrait done and tell you things about yourself that you could never believe to be true. But I have thanked them many times before, but I will thank them again. Ben, Bart, David, that's Bart's son, Dicky, and Benson and Bebo, wherever they are, for their kindness to me.
They that's really didn't love you enough to show up.
Yeah, they. That's right.
They're out of the club.
That's right. I do look a lot younger in that picture, don't I?
We can go back to the coffee shop.
Yeah. I will tell you a dilemma that they created for me. So somebody gives you a portrait of yourself. What are you going to do with it? I mean, come on, right? I won't tell you where it is, but you will never find it in my house if you ever come to visit.
So, all right, so let's talk about Theo of Golden just for a little bit. How did you come up with that idea? I mean, how does a writer go, hey, this is what I want to write about?
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, it came from a moment in life. For 15, 18 years, I was a singer-songwriter. I love to write. And so I really, for my own benefit, defined my work as noticing things. That was my job, was to wake up, kind of tune into what's going on around me, and then be cognizant enough to find something every day to write a song about. And sometimes I would finish a song every day, sometimes I wouldn't. But I was constantly on the prowl for things to write about. And I love to write metaphorical songs where, for instance, you got two blind birds, two one-eyed birds, a conversation between them, a song about friendship. or a song about an Easter egg that didn't get found at the Easter egg hunt. I just love those moments where I think there is this kernel of truth. And so I tended to write a lot of songs that were like parables. And I still think that way a lot. And the first song that I ever sing whenever I do concerts is "Please Turn Off Your Cell Phone Now." It's amazing.
I was hoping you were going to do that.
Yeah. That was not a setup, incidentally. That was for real. But so when I kind of wander through the world now, my eyes and my mind still work that way. And there's a term that Eugene Peterson wrote in one of his books, adorational attentiveness. Y'all let that soak in. Adorational attentiveness. There is a good attentiveness that, you know, we kind of go through and we're just aware of what's around us. But I think that his phrase implies that if we are attentive in the deepest and best sense of the word, it leads our hearts to a place of adoration. Adoration for the Creator, the creation, the people around us, the experiences we have, the beauty in which we move and live and have our being. And so I think that became kind of the mindset that, again, providentially, it was nothing clever about me. Providentially, that's just the way my mind started to work. And so when I left music, that habit was already in my head. And, you know, I would like to think that if I were a parent, and I would encourage you who are, do everything you can. Do everything you can to fire up the imagination of your children. And as teachers, fire up the imagination of your students. It is such a wonderful and I think often misused or unused faculty that we have. But people ask me sometimes, okay, you live in a little town out in the middle of the woods. You don't have a wife, you don't have children. Don't you get bored and don't you get lonely? And I tell them usually, well, yeah, I do get lonely. Everybody gets lonely. I have a different word for it. I just say I'm homesick. But yes, but I don't think I'm any lonelier than the most happily married people I know. So that's the answer to that question. Do you ever get bored? I never get bored. Because the imagination is a faculty that, again, thanks to the sweetness of God, is very finely tuned in my head. So to stand in a coffee shop and see the portraits, it didn't surprise me a bit that I thought this could really be a wonder. I thought song. And then I thought, well, that could be it'd probably be a long song, maybe too long. And so I thought, well, maybe there's a story here. And so that's where the story came from.
Yeah.
And then, again, I had the portraits. I put them on the floor against the wall, and I looked at them for days and days. And then I thought, what would it be to give that portrait to that guy? And he became Basil Cannonfield, the street musician. And then there's Manette, and there's Ellen, and there's Kendrick. And I started writing the scenes as if I were giving the portraits.
Right.
And then that was experimentation, and then I started thinking, I think I could weave these together. And so that's where it came from.
Yeah.
But I think, again, there's no special magic to it. We all have the faculty or the potential to develop keen imaginations. I will say this, that I think that part of that perception for me, again, no credit to myself, but part of it comes from the fact that for most of my adult life, I did not have a television. When I started law practice, I realized I would come home at the end of a work day, and my brain would just be fried, and I would turn on the television and then just vegetate for hours. And I realized I'm wasting a lot of my life because I don't have the willpower to turn off the television. This is me confessing a shortcoming on my part. But I got rid of it. And for years, decades, I didn't have a television. I began to read much more. I began writing songs more. I think I was outside more. And I think as a result of that I won't say ability, but that propensity to see song material and story material all around me, it just became pretty fine-tuned. And so here we are.
Yeah.
Public speaker.
I'm seeing a theme here, a through line. Public speaking is your gift.
Yeah, that's my thing now.
Yeah.
And
So you've mentioned Basil and Alan, but everybody wants to know, was Theo, who was Theo? Was he a real person?
Yeah. There is no one in the book who was a real person except for the little Guatemalan man. But every character is, I'm sure, a composite of someone I know, right? I mean, y'all all, I'm sure you probably read all the characters if you've read the book and you thought, I know somebody kind of like this. And so I wanted the story to be credible. I wanted it to be accessible. And so I wanted the characters to be somewhat familiar. But they were all spun out of whole cloth. I knew that I wanted Theo to be a man of extraordinary but very winsome virtue. And I knew that I wanted him to characterize a godliness that would appeal and teach me something. And so as I was writing the character, it dawned on me as I got deeper and deeper into it, he looks a lot like my brother. And so as I wrote him, Theo, I couldn't help but think about Gary, because my brother at 55 did a whole lot of things already well or better than Theo did at 86. And I mean, I knew all of my brother's faults as well, and I didn't load the book up with any of that, but he certainly was an inspiration. I mean, Gary, to that character by the time I got to the end of the book.
Well, you know, Theo was, I remember that day we were all sitting around the table, and when we all read the book, the big joke was, you know, who was Theo, and we all tried to take credit like, hey, I notice you've been talking to me a lot lately, and you know, and we all, but after we read the book, for 5 egotistical men that were sitting around with you at that point, all of a sudden, nobody wanted to be Theo, because he was so separated, so different, and he lived life to the full. You know, at 86 years old, the way he cared for people, that we didn't try to be Theo anymore because we were inadequate.
Well, let me correct you. You whether you try to be or not, you do embody Theo very richly. Whenever I sign the books, it has become standard practice to put to whoever I'm signing for, with thanks for the Theo in you. And by that I mean 2 things. One is that you bear the image of God, the Imago Dei. Theo is a God word. It is a deity word. And I don't mean to inject my faith inappropriately here, but we're grown-ups. If you don't agree with that perspective, I hope you can respect that that's my perspective. And so to say I recognize and I'm thankful for the Theo in people is to say, no matter how badly broken Ellen is, no matter how stubborn and bullheaded Tony is, they are still image bearers, and they have Theo in them as well. But secondly, the potential to live life, to try to imitate the character in the novel, we all have that. And I have been really drawn to the conclusion since the book came out that there are so many good people in the world. The bad guys get the attention. The loud ones get the attention. The ones that are flamboyant and who want attention, they get it. But the person that shows up at Mountain Brook School when she doesn't feel like it, or the guy that's losing all of the ball games and is having a hard time coaching well, but shows up every day and keeps doing their job, it's just a demonstration of that goodness that we have in us. And hopefully it's an expression of the love that we have for people around us. And so, Dicky, yes, I know you're being humorous and falsely modest, but I would say to you and to Betsy, your wife, your beautiful wife in particular, but my buddies and to all of you, I am thankful for the Theo in you. And bring him to life. Bring that part out of your life to the surface and feed it. And go through the day with adorational attentiveness as your mindset. And who knows what a difference we can make in our communities, what I can make in my community, if I'll just lean into that more and more. So,
yeah. So I, in my great preparation for this time, I looked at Alan this morning and I said, hey, newsflash, I haven't written a question yet for this afternoon.
It's obvious.
But one thing I did do over the last couple of weeks is just, I've always loved your music, and I started listening to it again. And while I was listening to this music, I was like, oh my gosh, he didn't write Theo in 2020. He's been writing it his whole life. And you tell stories. One of my favorites is Most of My Heroes.
Yeah.
And so do you remember the lyrics of that?
Most of my heroes are people who have little. Most of my heroes are people who give. No, I don't. It's a great song, though. Y'all really ought to listen to it.
It is a great song.
It's a song, just so you know, because I know probably a lot of you are familiar with Young Life. I did a 1-month stint at one of their camps out in British Columbia one summer, and I wrote that for the staff that was there, the volunteer leaders, the high school students and college students that were doing the heavy lifting, and it was for them. But it basically makes the point that most of my heroes, all of my heroes, are just simple people. They're not famous. They're obscure. They probably don't believe much about themselves, but that's who my heroes are, and that would be true. It's Mrs. Tanqueray, and it's Miss Freeman, and it's Mr. Pace, and Mrs. Hurt, my teachers, and then youth ministers and people who have poured into my life. And again, if I could remember the song and if I could sing still, I would sing it to all of you teachers. Just to say to you, to some kid, I can almost promise you, if you've done your job even remotely well, there is some kid out there who would say to you, if he or she could sing it to you, you are my hero. And I hope you can believe that about yourself. But that's the best I can remember of the song. It's a great song, though.
It's a great song. It really is. It's on Spotify, too.
It's on
Spotify. Yeah. So, and you can give me $5 if you listen to it. And so I need
Which is more than I ever made as a musician.
But I bring that up just because when you see the life of Theo in that 1 year, in that, in Golden, you see that song played out every day.
Yeah.
Theo didn't go to the mayor.
Right.
He didn't go, to the most important people.
Right.
He hung out with just the normal people.
Yeah.
And he greatly affected their life in every way.
Yeah. I think that's true. One of the things that I wanted to be real clear about writing into the character is that he was not doing it for attention toward himself. And you might remember that he had an encounter with a reporter who wanted to do a story on him. And he resisted that. He said, please don't. If you do that, you're gonna ruin everything that I'm trying to do. Because the next time I give a bestowal, if it's a week after the article comes out in the newspaper, that person's gonna think I'm doing it because I wanted newsprint with my name in it. And so he invokes that teaching that many of us are familiar with. Do not, when you are charitable, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Or as George Bush once said, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. But he was insistent that the attention not be drawn to him. And, in a cultural mindset that we live in now, which says everything's got to be noticed, it's got to be viral, it's got to be something that draws attention to the, influencer, that sort of thing. Theo would push back against that and say, don't let anybody know if you can help it. Just do it for the purity of the act itself. And I would challenge the whole room. Think of a person who has a need. It might be as small as a kind word. It might be something big. But do something and tell no one about it. And then take the temperature of your heart and see if you don't feel something in there that you don't feel very often. And do it with the awareness that somebody saw what you did. The only one who matters saw what you did, and it counts. But that is not a brand of generosity that I'm familiar with in practice much myself, but it's one that even writing the character challenged me to be a person who is genuinely charitable, not for self-congratulation or for the applause of people, but because it's the right thing to do.
So you continually talk about all through your life, just the little acts of kindness that take place. And you embody that in many ways. And so forgive me for making this public, but you go to the high school twice a week in Hamilton, Georgia, and just open the door for students when they come in, you call them by name.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not original to me, so I can't really take any credit for it. That was my brother's idea. He lived overseas for about 20 plus years of his adult life doing missions and humanitarian work in really stressed places in the world. The last 5 years off and on, he was in Afghanistan. But whenever he came home, he would try to plug into things in our community just to be a blessing to our neighbors. And he substitute taught for a while. But when he quit doing that, he got permission from the school administration to just go to the back door in the mornings. We have one high school, 1,700 students. Stand at the door and greet kids. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 3 days a week. And then Thursday morning, there was a group of men that would gather to pray for the high school students. And so I started doing that because of Gary, my brother. And that was 25 or so years ago. When Gary died, 15 years ago now, as much as I did not want to go, it's just not nearly as pleasant by myself, but I continued to do that. And at this point in my life, it seems like an altruistic or a really nice, thing to do. It's pure selfishness on my part. There cannot be a better way to start a day than to stand at a high school door and say good morning to however many kids come through. And I've got an annual, so I try to learn the names, and I don't know, I know a few hundred of them anyway, and get to say good morning to them, and just to be, hopefully, a loving presence in their lives. Many of these same kids I read to when they were in elementary school. Every year I try to adopt 2 classes. This year I just did one because I've been really busy with the book. But every Thursday morning, my favorite thing in life to do is to go read to elementary school kids. And so this year I read to Mrs. Dolan's 2nd grade class. And I will say this too, because I know that it probably sounds, God, he's really a nice guy. And I hope some of that's true, but because I do live a somewhat isolated life, I take very deliberate steps to make sure that I'm engaging with people, because I am dangerously tempted to spend too much time alone. And having a creative mind, while it can be a blessing, can also be a curse, because what's going on in my mind a lot of times, and in your minds, if you're honest, is way more interesting than the conversation that you're having to endure with somebody who didn't prepare for their interview. But going to the school, going to the ball games and things like that, which all of you do, because most of you probably, because you have families, I have to make a real conscious effort at it. But those are little nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and love.
So play this out. What if everybody in this room decided, I'm going to do 2 things a week that have nothing to do with me, but will do good for others?
Yeah.
Play that out. What's happened in your community because of some of the things that, not just you, but what Gary did and what some of your friends have done in that community? How's that look in the community?
Yeah.
In Hamilton?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one. I got a call just recently, like within the last week, from a woman. I don't know her well, but she has had a son, and Gary mentored this young man during high school. And he could not hear, and he could not speak. And he was very difficult to spend time with just because it was hard to communicate with him. And I have not seen the young man myself. I spent some time with him, usually with Gary. And so he's now adult, married, got a child or children, lives up in the upper Midwest. And a couple of weeks ago, he died very suddenly. And the mother reached out to me, and she mentioned Gary's love in this guy's life and what he had meant to her. And they're trying to plan a memorial. And knowing that Gary could not come to speak, she asked if I would participate in that. Again, that is much more a credit to my brother than it would be to me. But to answer your question honestly, Dicky, and this is the great thing about doing charity for the right reason, we never know what the effect is. There's a writer named Peter Kreeft who I like a lot. He's a professor at Boston College. Last I knew his whereabouts. He's a theologian, but he's a scholar in a wide array of writers and thinkers. He said in one of his books, how different might our lives be? And I would add to that, how different would the world be? How different would Birmingham be? Mountain Brook be? Harris County be? Hoover be? If we could believe that some little thing we do today could change a life 3,000 miles away and 300 years in the future. That is the great and mysterious opportunity of our lives. We do it not because we have to see the fruit of it, not because we expect to be applauded for it, but because it's the right thing to do. We will get our reward for that immediately, I think. There's a joy that comes from that. But I think it's probably a safeguard that we don't get to see the good fruit of it sometimes. Otherwise, I would start taking credit for it, maybe believing I'm all that. And that kind of undoes the sweetness of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I do know this. Our community, because of 35 or 40 guys that meet every Thursday morning for 25 years now, to pray for high school kids and to read the book together and to strategize how we can serve our community, there's no doubt in my mind that when the curtain is, when it's pulled back and we can see the effect that's had on our community, the work of those 35 guys will have been profound. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah.
And it'll be good.
Yeah. All right, let's turn the page a little bit and let's just talk about this stardom that has happened for you. I mean, look at you. You look so good that I tried to dress like you today.
I did put my shirt on first this morning, incidentally. I want y'all to know that.
So you've had, well, early on, when it was self-published, you would call people and thank them for reading your book.
Yeah.
You'd find out, Bart would say, hey, John Frank, just read your book, and you'd say, give me his number, I'll give him a call.
Yeah.
And you would call and say, thank you for reading my book, and what'd you think, and stuff.
Yeah.
How does that conversation go? I mean,
Oh, they're great. I still do that every week. I get a lot of mail. I can't answer it. It's too much. And I feel really impolite about that because I was raised to have good manners. And somebody writes you a really beautiful letter, and I just don't have the bandwidth time-wise. It's not a want to. It's just an impossibility. But if, for whatever reason, they put their phone number, I can call them. But if someone else tells me a story, then a lot of times I will say, and it's, again, this isn't, it sounds self-congratulatory now because I shouldn't be telling y'all about this. But it really is genuinely just to say thank you. None of y'all had to read this book. That was 12 hours of your life. Nobody has to read some author's book, some first-time novelist's book. And I am genuinely grateful. But some of the friendships, I say friendships, that have resulted from it have just been absolutely beautiful.
So tell us about the woman up north.
Yeah, so the one that Dicky's talking about, one day my sister called, and my niece and my sister who work for them, they can tell when I'm getting discouraged. And I don't read any reviews, I don't read social media, so I don't get the positive feedback that they check on every day. But when they feel me going down, they will send me either a text or a copy of an email or something, or they'll just send a phone number and say, call this person. And I know now that means, number one, they can tell I'm discouraged, and number two, they want to lift my spirits. So one day my sister called and she said, hey, I want you to call this woman. Her name is Carol. And I said, well, tell me about Carol. She said, call Carol. And so I called Carol. And Carol lived in Chicago. And Carol, my name is Alan Levi, and I wrote this book and understand that you read it, and I just wanted to call and say thank you. And that was my agenda, was just to say thank you. And so we had this really delightful conversation, and she had time to talk. And I said, well, tell me about yourself. You will love this, you educators. She was 32 years a high school teacher of English at an inner city Chicago low-income, high single-parent community. She loved her job. She had retired. And she started a book club. And I don't recall the exact name of it, but the way that I remember it was books that everybody ought to have read before they die, classic literature. And it was like 50 or so people who were part of this Zoom class. And she said, Alan, we're getting ready to read your book. And I said, well, you know, I'm still alive. There's no way that this could be a classic work of literature. And she said, yeah, she said, I know. She said, but, she said, I went to my doctor recently, and he said, I've got about six months to live. And she said, the last book that I want to read with him is your book. And so we had this really wonderful conversation full of gratitude. And I said, could I write your class a letter and thank them for reading the book? She said, you could. She said, but you know what? We're going to do this over 4 weeks. She said, why don't you call for the last class? She says, it's a 2-hour session. And I said, tell me when, and I'll call. And it was a Zoom session. 2 of the richest hours of my life. Mm. And I was able to thank Carol for her class, and I think in behalf of her class, for what she did. And she and I kept in touch after that. And she finally went into hospice. And the last conversation we had, I knew it was probably the last or near last conversation I would have with her. But I thanked her. I told her I loved her. She told me she loved me. And the next time I called, she didn't answer. And she died. But the thought that she gave me 10 or 12 hours of her life to read that story and then to share it because she thought it had that much value. I don't care how many millions of books I sell. There will never be anything that is more rewarding than a moment or a conversation like that. And again, I hearken to you teachers. You might not hear it often, but I hope that every now and then you hear somebody whisper to you, even if it's just in your spirit, well done. Well done for the way you love me. So Carol is one of those.
Yeah.
And she stands out, but again, most every week I call a handful of people.
Yeah.
And it's been great.
On the flip side of that, you flew to Hawaii about a month ago.
Yeah.
And was interviewed by Oprah.
Yep.
I don't know if y'all know who Oprah is. I mean, you know, as I heard somebody say today, hey, I'm sorry, I just need to be a fangirl right here. And I thought, what's a fangirl? And I saw her swoon, and I went, oh, that's a fangirl. So I don't need to be a fanboy. But what was it like being interviewed by a person like Oprah? And I mean, because a year ago, actually it was November when you were switching over to Simon & Schuster.
That's right.
And you were no longer going to be self-published.
That's right.
And so you had sold 200,000 copies of this book, which is unbelievable.
Right.
But now you're up to 3 million.
Right at it. Yeah.
And so, you know, within a year, you've gone from sitting on a deck with 5 guys talking about life and then flying to Hawaii, being interviewed about something that you did.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, first of all, I don't describe that at all as something that I did. I really think there has been a choreography that is in place that I have very little control over. And I honestly, I'm just deeply grateful. So the fact that we sold any books still astonishes me. But the fact that it's gotten out, because of ones like you who have read it and shared it, I realize I am your debtor and will always be in terms, you know, of the book. But yeah, it was really a wonderful experience. She's a person like all of us. She has done exceptional things, and we have developed something of a friendship. We keep in touch. She is keenly interested in everything. And so, you know, we talk a lot about books. We talk about race relations. We talk about technology. things that all of us talk about these days. But it's gotten to the point that at first I was like y'all would have been. I was kind of starstruck. In the interview, I was really ill at ease because we didn't get to talk long before we actually began the conversation. But she was delightful. But I'm reminded she's just one of us. I mean, all these people that we elevate, they're just us. And they bear the image of God no matter how broken it is. And they have the same potential that we have to do good things for the right reason. You know, I think sometimes kindness and charity, especially in that lofty realm among people who have a lot to give, and this isn't talking about her at all, but it's almost like giving and charity becomes a competitive sport. Like, who can outdo it? Who can outdo this big gift? And again, we're looking for this viral moment, or we're looking for this thing where a lot of attention is concentrated on a particular act. But there is a story that I draw I hope a lot of wisdom from. And it's one that is Jesus. There was a time when there was a public offering being given. And the way that they used to do it, they had these big cauldrons where people would come and dump their money in. This is at least my understanding of it. And so if you had a bunch, you know, you'd kind of come in with a lot of fanfare and you'd dump all your money and everybody would applaud, big deal, hoorah, this is great, viral, it's great. You're going to get a lot of clicks for this. And Jesus didn't really draw any attention to that. But there was this woman who had 2 pennies. And she dropped her little pennies in the bucket. And Jesus called his buddies over and he said, I want y'all to watch this. This is special. This is real. This is you turning up at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning to teach English or grammar or long division or biology. Little things that nobody notices. But in the kingdom that I'm very grateful to be a part of, that matters. And so as wonderful as it is to be with people who we all recognize, I try to remember 2 pennies and who's watching.
Yeah. It just, when I read this book, and I think maybe you can talk about this, but because today I've heard at least 10 people come up and say, this book is so important to me, not only to me, but to this community, or it's timely, which might be true. So I'll ask you to speak about that. But for me, it was one of these things where I would read it, and it was, in some way, it was doable.
Yeah.
I can't give $1 million to somebody.
Right.
But I can sit down on a bench and ask somebody 4 or 5 questions.
Thank you.
Or I can, pay for somebody's groceries without them knowing about it. Or just, $10 or something like that. And so what it was for me was an encouragement to do the right thing in a small step.
Right.
And just small steps to care for people well. Yeah. And it starts in my family.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
Yeah, well said. And I think you're exactly right. Small things done well over a long period of time.
Yeah.
That's how corn grows. You can't rush it. And I think that kind of has to be the mindset and the framework within which we work. And again, we're all capable of it. What was the first part of the question? I just lost
So
my
why is it a needed book in this time?
Well, I don't know that it's needed more now than ever. I think it's tempting. I certainly fall prey to this, to think, gosh, things are worse than they've ever been. But any student of history knows that's not the case. C.S. Lewis said that the role of the historian is to familiarize him or herself with other times to, and I quote, protect ourselves from the cataract of nonsense that pours forth from the microphones and newspapers of our own age. And so I think we study history and we realize, gosh, the world's always been messed up. We just all have a megaphone, and we've got these platforms now for celebrating or bringing to everyone's attention the worst that's going on in the world. And it seems, and maybe it's worse, I don't know. Who could ever know an answer to that? But But I think the message, love your neighbor as yourself, that's pretty timeless. And anything that reminds us of it and speaks to the better angels of our nature, it should be well received, and it should be a reminder to us of what kind of potential we have. When I was writing the book, I would ask myself every so often, is this believable? Is this a credible story? Because I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be something that was at least somewhat didactic, that we could take it and we could say, yes, this is right, and yes, I want to live this in my life. And again, I'm the audience in that situation. Can I live this out? Can I put this into practice in my life? And every time I asked myself that question, the answer was always yes. This is a credible story. To your point, maybe we don't have great collections of art, and we don't have vast bank accounts and sums of money or societal pull or political power, anything like that. But that's not what it takes. Small things well over a long period of time. In the book, really what Theo did, most of it was very attainable. I mean, I can think of scores of people in my hometown that could do everything in the book that Theo did. But again, there is a difference between thinking about doing it and doing it, right? And so hopefully the book calls us to be people who put into practice, again, with no thought of self-congratulation, but let me do it because it's right. And whatever reward, if any, that comes from it, that's somebody else's business and not ours.
All right, one last question, and then we're going to open it up for people if they have questions. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask this so nobody else is. Another book? Maybe? What's going on? Can you get to work? Quit talking to people, get to work?
If school superintendents would just leave me alone, I could write the book. This is the craziest thing. Yeah, so when we finally finished Theo, I thought, well, I guess my job, I'm a writer, so I need to be writing. And I do have lots and lots of ideas for books I'd like to write. But I was thinking, I wonder what his story really is, or her story really is. So for the last 2+ years, I've been working on Ellen of Golden. And I'm just slogging my way through. She has been so uncooperative. But I have set aside some time this summer, and Lord willing, I will get it as close to the finish line as I can by the end of the summer. And then I will decide, with input from my buddies, and maybe a small handful of others, if this is worthy of anybody's reading time. And because I don't have any contractual obligation to do any more books, I'm free. If I don't like what I come up with, and if I don't get their blessing, then you'll just have to wait 3 or 4 more years till I write the next one. But Ellen of Golden is the one that's on the writing desk right now, and the more I write it, the more I love her, and it's feeling like a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, one last thing before we ask questions. I want to go ahead and, Alan, we have a little thought we would do with the people here. So you want to tell them, or you want
to do it now, or you want them to ask their questions, because you know what'll happen.
All right, well, yeah, so let's ask questions for about, we're going to go no longer than 15 minutes. So if you have a question, we have some people with microphones.
Have we already talked too much? Have we already done too much? Y'all okay? Okay.
I know I haven't talked too much. And so if y'all want to ask me a question, feel free.
He's got a shirt just like mine. Look at that. He's got a shirt just like mine.
She's turning the microphone on.
Alan, my name's John. I'm ready for book.
Hey, John.
My phone number is nice shoes.
Yeah.
So, tell me about your men. What's the genesis of the group?
Yeah.
How did it happen? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
You could take one word descriptive of each of these 5 guys. Could you do that for us?
Wow.
I don't think we have time for that.
I'll try, John. That's a great question and a very thoughtful question. And I have not thought about it, so this is going to be really difficult. The genesis of the gathering, though, John, is that we have college connection. We formed our friendships back in the early 80s, I guess, and kind of lost touch. At least most of us did. Ben, May, and Dicky grew up together. They've been friends, lifelong friends. And I've known Bart since he was a little boy. Bebo Norman I've known since he was a little boy. Benson Bottoms I've known from a friendship up in Athens. I don't remember who had the idea.
I think it was me.
Can y'all cut his mic off up there, please, until I finish mine? It may have been Dicky. I don't know who it was. But someone had the idea, let's get together. And so we did. And I don't know that we ever really intended at the start to last forever, but we've been doing it 20 years or so now. 25 years now?
Yeah.
Wow. And so, John, we get together. We have no agenda. It's usually like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the only requirement is that everyone be willing to share their year in review. And so we eat a lot of food, we laugh a lot, we catch up just on current events and that kind of stuff. But at some point, for instance, Dicky has to put himself in the spotlight and talk for a couple of hours about where he is in life, and the rest of us get to ask questions. So we have buried loved ones. We have been through some really hard things together. We talk about books a lot. We all share a common faith, so we pray a lot together. But I tell you, it's one of the treasures of my life. It really is one of the treasures of my life. Gentle, thoughtful, gracious, Bebo, empathetic, and Benson, encouraging. Who in this world would not benefit from that? 5 guys that you get to meet with. And I wish we could do it more. We live in different places. But who wouldn't benefit from having 5 people in their lives to just pour each one of those traits or their attributes into them? Thank you for the question. Like that shirt. That looks just like my shirt.
Hi, my name's Amanda,
Hey,
and
Amanda.
I wanted to tell you, since I read the book, that your description of grief of Theo's daughter when she passed away was the most beautiful thing I've ever read in my life. And I couldn't even say those words for about a month after I read the book to people, how the description of grief was just so real and so touching and just beautiful at the same time, just sad. And I was just wondering if that came from personal experience or that description was something that you experienced yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So I was probate judge. As many of you probably know, probate is the legal process whereby a will is proven to be the true last will and testament of a deceased person. The court also handled other matters. But the last thing I did before undertaking the writing of this book was serve as probate judge, which meant that I was in the presence of grief and, people who have passed away on a very regular basis. I stepped into that job shortly after my brother had died. And it's been 15 years now, and any of you who've lost your best friend in life, you know how somehow the grief is always just below the surface. It's not hopeless grief. It's not bitter grief, but it's there a lot. And so that was kind of recent to where I was in life at the time, but I really, really, really agonized over that scene because it's a hard thing to express. Not that I pretended I expressed it fully, but I wanted people to hurt at that part of the story. And there's no telling how many times I wrote. And I can't tell you how many tears I cried. Trying to write the scene because I could feel it myself. But I guess to answer your question, it was just kind of the composite of where I was in life, people who I had recently encountered, and then just, I'm 70 now, so at the time I was in my mid-60s. By this time in life, you've just seen so much hurt in the world. It's easy to cry and to grieve. It's not without hope, but I think as I was writing that scene, it was just, and I pray, please let me write this well. I hadn't read the scene since I hadn't read it in 4 or 5 years now. But I hope that I captured something of the old man's grief But at the same time, I did add late in the writing process his conversation with Asher in the coffee shop, where he talks about sadness and how sadness is a part of life, and you really can't have an adequate joy or a full joy without sadness alongside it. And I just wanted to make sure that the point was made that being sad or experiencing grief does not nullify the potential for joy in our lives at the same time. We grieve, but not as those who have no hope. I think Theo, if nothing else, was a man full of hope, and even with his loss. Thank you for bringing that scene to bear.
Hi there, my name is Krista. I am a former high school social studies teacher.
Okay.
And right now I work with educators on helping them connect students to their emotions and to connect with everybody else. And when I read your book, it was the most profound, impactful book. And I'm shaking as I'm saying this, and I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for putting it out into the world.
Thank you, Krista.
Thank you. And thank you to your friends for encouraging you to put it out.
Yeah. Thank you, Krista.
Hey, my name is Stephanie.
Say the name again?
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Stephanie, yes. Anyway, it's Luke wanted me to say something else, but my question is, you mentioned earlier that there was one character in the book, the Guatemalan, that was a real character.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us about him and why you chose him?
Yeah. So when I was a judge, I also handled misdemeanor crimes in our community. And so one day I was in my office, Stephanie, and the two deputies escorted this man to my office. And he had just been picked up, and he was undocumented. And there was no traffic accident that resulted in a fatality. I don't remember what the offense was, honestly. But when he came to the office, I could tell he was terrified. And he was very small, but he was terrified. And so the first thing I did was demanded that they take the shackles and the handcuffs off of him. Any one of us could have mashed him under our thumb. And I had him sit down at a little table that I had in my office at the time, and I had to bring in a translator because I wanted to dispose of the criminal matter while he was there. And so we transacted whatever business had to be done, and then I asked the translator if she would stay, and I asked the gentleman if he would stay, and I just wanted to have a conversation with him. And I reminded him, told him from the outset, I said, please don't be afraid. If you've done something bad, I've got to deal with it. But I'm not here to hurt you, but I've got a job to do, but you don't have to be afraid of me. And so after we conducted the legal part, I just said, will you tell me your story? And he said, yes, sir, I'm from Guatemala. I've got a 14-year-old daughter. She has cancer. She lives 50 miles north of here with her mother. I've been here 14 years myself. I'm a bricklayer. And I got deported because I'm not supposed to be here. But he said, I could not leave my daughter. And so that evening I went home and I wrote his name in my prayer book, and I still pray for him. And I could tell you his name right now. I changed it at the 11th hour and the 59th minute. It was in the text. But I thought that might not be very wise. And again, this is not to excuse or is not to make any statement about, the politics of that particular issue. But there is never, I think, a reason to be unkind unnecessarily or come across as unkind unnecessarily. And so I thought, if I were in his shoes, I'd probably done the same thing. And I still pray for him and this little girl. To me, that little cluster of chapters, Kendrick trying to figure out what to do, Kendrick realizing this man is just a little poor dad who loves his little girl, just like me. And then Kendrick's conversation with the DA. I was in your court and you never looked at me. You never looked at my face. How often do I go through life without looking at people's faces, looking in their eyes? I think Jesus looked in people's eyes. And I'm trying to get better at it. But that part of the book to me is the dramatic high point of the story. And to me, thematically, that develops the story, culminates everything that I'm trying to communicate. The idea of incarnation, relationship, humanity, kindness, love. But to me, that was a really strong part of the book. Thank you for asking about that.
All right, we got 3 more minutes. So if you got a
3 more
question,
minutes.
there's one way up there, and there's 2 right there. We'll do, well, there's 3. All right, these 3 people, and then we'll be through. Okay?
Yes, sir. My name is Larry.
Hey, Larry.
Loved your book, every sentence. But the only question I have about the book is, did your friend give you the money for the 100 books?
Cubby.
Let me tell you a story. Larry. 2 weeks ago, I was in Italy. I don't travel much these days, but it was a tour group. A friend of mine owns the company. I went over to Italy, and there was a mother and daughter that were standing on a bridge overlooking the Mediterranean, right there on the cliffs of a town called Sorrento. And they were trying to take a selfie, and I was there with another young lady. I'm a young man. And she said, "Would you like me to take your picture?" And so they said, "Yeah, that would be really nice." And they were American. We could tell they were Americans. She took the picture. And then, just being silly, I said, "Could I take a picture with y'all? And would you take it with your camera, please?" And so we took a picture and said goodbye. And the woman who took the picture, my friend, said, "Hey, y'all might like to read this guy's book. He wrote this really good book. It's called Theo of Golden." And the woman said, she stopped, gasped, and she said, "Cubby Culbertson, that guy is my next door neighbor in Columbia, South Carolina." But to answer your question, Cubby, and take this as a marketing tip. He said, I called him. I said, "Hey, Cubby, I want to dedicate the book to somebody. I don't really know that anybody would want their name associated with it, but you don't have a whole lot of pride about you, so could I dedicate the book to you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I told him what I was going to write. He said, "Well, I do want to buy 100 copies of the book, but I just want 1 copy." He said, "What I want you to do is take the other 99 copies and get your niece Erin to find 99 book clubs and just send a copy to the leader of the clubs." And it was hard to find 99 clubs that she could find the point person for. But ladies and gentlemen, that is what kick-started Theo in the world. And I'm forever indebted to Cubby. He's a great guy. My buddies here are all mad at me that I didn't dedicate it to them, but I know what they think. But they're way too proud. I didn't want to blow their heads up, so I dedicated it.
Well, everybody knows my nickname's Cubby. Up top.
Mr. Allen, my name is Luke, and I'm so thankful that you've written this book. It's impacted me in many ways, but 2 ways that I've been really impacted is really 2 principles that kind of work together. One, that is our lives, it really is a series of relationships. Yeah. And you see how Theo interacts with so many peoples, but also that we are a culmination of all of our influences. And you've talked about certain teachers that have influenced you, and unfortunately, we probably can't meet them. But who are the writers that influenced you, the fictional writers, the novels that you read?
Yeah, thank you, Luke. That's a great question. So the writers that I have read are many, and I will tell you that I'm a very slow reader. And usually when I tell people that, they say, "Well, you must have really great retention." I have no retention. I am a terrible reader, but I'm an avid reader. I read a lot. And I wouldn't say that I necessarily read to remember so much of what I read as to be changed by it. And I can point to books that have changed me profoundly over the course of my life. But as far as authors who I like, Wendell Berry is my favorite. He's a Kentucky farmer, still alive. He writes fiction, poetry, nonfiction, well known in the conservation movement and that sort of thing. brilliant writer. C.S. Lewis, I read him almost every day, even now. George MacDonald was a Scottish fiction writer who I like a lot. His writing was probably not the most technically proficient writing ever, but I love the theme of his writing. I like Dickens. I like John Steinbeck. Who else do I like, Bart? Mark Twain. Mark Twain. So, Luke, when I was in high school, I developed this real fondness for Mark Twain. And I hate to admit this in public, but I went to our school library over the course of time and stole all of the Mark Twain books. It was in the name of building my library. And this is obviously the moral compass that was in me at the time was not terribly strong, but later on things changed. And when I went into law practice, that's high school, so this is many years later, my conscience began to bother me because I would walk by those books and I knew they were not mine. And so I contacted the librarian of my high school and I told her, I said, Mrs. Self, I've got a bunch of your books. And I explained the story to her and I said, I really do want to make it right. So I can bring the books back and I'll give you, whatever money. And so we came to a settlement on it. But I really like Mark Twain, and I read him a lot. There's another writer I like a lot, probably not one of my favorites, but I read him from time to time when I really want to laugh. P.G. Wodehouse, who's a British writer. And first time I ever read a P.G. Wodehouse novel was on a plane flying home from Detroit. And I was absolutely obnoxious on the plane. I was laughing so hard. And when my brother died, the thing that I missed most about his presence in my life was laughter. He and I laughed all the time about everything. We had that language that two people develop over a long friendship or a marriage, that kind of thing. And when he died, it's like 3/4 of my laughter just disappeared overnight. And I still try to recover that. Conversation is the best way. Days like this are a good way to do it. But a good book is that as well. So those are just a few of them, but there are lots of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last question.
Last question.
And then don't leave because we have one thing to tell you.
My name's Ron. My wife introduced me to your book, and I can't thank her enough for it.
Thank you.
She took me to Columbus, and we actually went to the coffee shop, and it's real. It's amazed me. But she also found Gary Pound's studio. We went by there and called the number in the window, and he showed up. And he's so gracious with his time and hospitable. When we were leaving, he showed us the portrait that he did of Oprah and that you were out there at that time.
Yeah.
I was just wondering how that bestowal went.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Ron. So in case y'all couldn't hear, Gary Pound, the artist who's a dear friend of mine from many, many years ago, still a superb, remarkable portrait artist, wouldn't you agree? And so after I had done the interview out in Hawaii, I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Winfrey. And I know she's got gazillions of pictures, right? I mean, it was very superfluous in one sense. But I wanted her to see the artistry of Gary Pound. And I have given lots and lots and lots of portraits to people, which Gary appreciates. Because it's good work for him, but
and he's not cheap.
And but I really enjoy just, I don't know how people react when they get them. When I got mine, I will tell you, I was an emotional slob. I wailed. I wailed. I was real afraid that the chef was going to leave the house. But I would like to think that when people get a portrait, there is something about that moment, and you just realize this guy drew 25,000 lines that are all me. And he used that eraser to take to put that little spot on my nose. And so, I hope it'll be a blessing. And Oprah, she was delighted. She called and she was really happy about it. And again, it's just a small thing, but maybe let that be an encouragement to all of us, myself most importantly, maybe, to be generous. And it doesn't have to be much. It can be a flower that you pick off the side of the road. It can be a phone call. It can be a letter. It can be a loaf of bread. It can be a meal. It can be a prayer. It can be all manner of things. But fill the world up with love and kindness. And we'll never, I'm just sure we'll never forget any of that. So do it well. Y'all have done that well. And I congratulate you and thank you for your lives here in your community. Okay, last thing.
Last thing.
Years ago, I wrote a song called Happy Lightning. Happy Lightning. It's a phrase that I stole from a writer in a book called, what's that book called? A Touch of Wonder by Arthur Gordon. He talks about happy lightning, those moments in life when something happens, just comes out of nowhere, right? And it's like the Cubby Culbertson moment, Larry, in Italy, where something just happens and it just brightens your day. Well, we thought we would deliver some happy lightning this morning, or this afternoon. This is a little, y'all can't see this well, but it's a little sticky tab. It's kind of wasabi, lime green. And if you look under your armrest, I think we've got
Left armrest.
left armrest. How many have we got out there?
There should be 20 out there.
There should be 20 of them out there. Dicky, you take it from there.
So if you have that, don't give it to your friend. I see people up there looking up look at the people.
Okay, attention. Attention.
So if you have one of those things.
Did y'all couldn't see it down front, but in the back there's some empty rows.
The people are fighting each other over a yellow tag. All right, so we want you to come down here at the end of this program if you have one of those things, and we have $50 for you, and we want you to go out and bestow something on a friend or a family member. So if you will do that, I would give Alan the last word, but he's had way too many words. So let me say a few things to you. Thank you for so much for coming and seeing my friend Alan and loving him by just showing up. And we would invite you to show up in your friends' lives in ways that you have not done, but you know in the back of your mind you think, I should really X, Y, Z. Don't wait. Go do it. Love somebody well. Thank you for being here.
Love y'all.
You feel just fine. Hey, you feel okay. You're just drifting through your ordinary day. Then all at once, it's like a storm erupts. Something catches your attention and it wakes you up. Well, it might just be a fleeting smile, the laughter of some little child.